Hello, everybody, and welcome to a brand new episode of Film Talk with Jordan Ramirez. I am your host, Jordan Ramirez, and today we are joined by fellow podcaster and the host of All Too Real 2, the pop culture podcast available on Spotify and Apple Podcasts. Please welcome Michael E. Cullen II. It's good to see you.
Good to see you too. Thanks for having me.
Thank you. Now, the film that Michael has chosen for today's episode is Once from 2007, directed by Jan Carney, excuse me, starring, of course, starring Michael Hansford and the wonderfully talented Markéta Irglová,
Glen
and it's
Hansard. Glen Hansford.
Glenn Hansford.
Yeah,
Excuse me again.
no problem.
Well, yeah, Glenn Hansford and Markéta Irglová, released in 2007. It's a low-budget film musical, takes place in Ireland. And so, without further ado, Michael, why did you pick this movie, and when did you first see this film?
I saw it in theaters in 2007 when it came out. It's probably my favorite movie of all time.
Hmm.
Um, I it's just small and simple and it tells a very interesting slice of life story that I think we all can relate to when we have those chance encounters in our life where we meet somebody that kind of changes our life.
Hmm. That's good.
Mhm.
So was there anything you took from this film that you enjoyed about this movie?
Everything. I mean, I think the acting is great. The music is amazing. Glenn and Markéta did all the music themselves. I mean, they wrote it and everything. And the movie was actually written based on Glenn and Markéta's music.
Hmm.
Originally, from what I read, is they weren't Glenn wasn't going to be in the movie. Markéta was, but they were going to have Cillian Murphy, who we know from Oppenheimer recently.
Mm-hmm.
He was going to be the guy in the movie. And but he turned it down because he didn't think he could sing as well as Glenn.
Mm-hmm.
So and and John Carney decided that, asked Glenn to be in the movie as the character. He was kind of hesitant, but the reason that the movie is so low budget is because Glenn insisted that it be low budget because he didn't want it to be some big epic movie like with he knew that the story had to be told very intimately and everything based on his own music, and he didn't want it to be that way. John and Glenn used to be in a band together called The Frames. Um, Glenn still has that band from time to time. They do things. But yeah, before John was a film director, he was in that band, so they've known each other forever. So
Yeah, I do, because when I do watch the film, it does feel documentary like with the use of the camcorders, giving it that documentary feel and that authenticity that I found very interesting and a creative decision. But that was something that I enjoyed. So, do you have a favorite scene in the film that stood to you, or that you found to be one of your favorite scenes in the movie?
um, I mean, I like all of them, but one interesting scene that I think people watching it won't understand is there's a scene where they go out on a motorcycle that is the guys. Yeah, the interesting thing about the characters in the movie is they're guy and girl. You never know their names.
No.
Yeah, so it's really kind of interesting. But that guy's dad owned a motorcycle and he kind of basically stole it from his dad to go out for a joyride for the day with with a girl. And there's a part where they get off the motorcycle and they're up on this like hill and it's really kind of beautiful. They have this kind of like intimate scene together where he asks how do you say do you love him in Czech, because she's from Czechoslovakia, or not Czechoslovakia, Czech Republic now, I'm sorry.
Mhm.
Yeah,
Yeah.
she tells him how to say that in Czech. And then so he asks her that in Czech and she responds in Czech. But if you don't know Czech, you don't know what she said. And her response was, "No, I love you."
Hmm.
So yeah.
Yeah, it's interesting because originally when I saw the film, originally I thought they were going to be, together, but then as the story progressed, we start to little learn that he was in love with somebody and she's already married and has a daughter,
Yeah.
and uh he decide and there was this sort of yearning. I remember this one sequence where he's singing, and you see footage of this woman whom he loves, and it's all told through this footage of her, like through these camcorder footage,
Yeah.
that that he still loves her, even though I think he mentioned in song that she left him for somebody else, is what I thought she said.
Yeah,
Uh,
she had an affair. Yeah.
yeah, and he still loves her, even though even though he thought that she was with somebody else, but maybe she isn't. So I thought it was a little bit open ended for me.
Yeah, and I kind of like that because, you kind of it leaves the audience up to their own interpretation of what things are going on in the movie.
Hmm.
A lot of areas in this movie, it doesn't just spell everything out for you, and I kind of like that because life doesn't spell everything out for you, and this is kind of what life is.
Yeah, it does. And I know that this was the director's first. Was this his first film in which he would later have a career that besides this film, he later directed a film called Sing Street in 2016, and he later did, I think, another film as recently as 2023. I don't remember the name of that movie right now.
Yeah, he did one that's on Apple TV Plus. I'm trying to remember what it is. I have yet to see that one. I've seen all the other ones. I've seen Sing Street. He did Begin Again with Mark Ruffalo
Hmm.
and oh, the woman from the Pirates of the Caribbean movies.
Oh, Keira Knightley.
Keira Knightley. Yeah, the two of them are in it. Yeah, and that's a really good movie too.
Mm,
Glenn contributed some music to that too as well. But yeah, it's he's tends to like stick to this like world of music in his films, and it's kind of cool. I like that because the other ones are obviously more bigger budget and
mm.
not as intimate in my opinion, but they're still good.
Yeah, but yeah, that's what I think was interesting. That even though this was his first film, and as you mentioned, he was previously in a band.
Yeah,
That I think it works because I like that the songs in this film that I got to watch are original and not like songs that were licensed from other musicians and artists, which I thought gave it more believability as I watched this movie.
yeah, and you can feel the like heart and connection to the songs because these were written by the actors. So, as opposed to like somebody else singing the songs that were written by somebody else. That's why I'm glad they didn't go with the, Cillian Murphy, casting him in the role. I mean, he's a great actor, obviously, but it's just, he probably wouldn't have had the same heart that Glenn has for the songs.
Mm, yeah, um, I understand that too. So going a little bit off topic with your show, All Too Real 2, which I enjoyed listening to.
Yeah.
I enjoyed one of the episodes, I think it was from last year. You covered the movie Food Fight,
Yeah.
which I thought I remembered I watched. There's another guy. He's from Canada. His name is Animat, and he watched the movie. He's like one of those guys that you have a reaction video, but you can only play like portions of the film. And I
Yeah.
remembered I didn't like. I remembered on the episode there was discussion about the animation, how it was really bad, and how it was reported that the original hard drives were stolen, and
Yeah.
which I thought was pretty interesting as well. But I liked you and the your co-host take on this film that I thought was pretty interesting. That one, and you mentioned you did many interviews with some of the actors and directors in the industry. One of them you mentioned was Jeffrey Wiseman, or
Yeah.
somebody who played who was he like the guy that ended up playing the George McFly character in the second and third Back to the Future films you
Yeah.
mentioned?
Yeah. Yeah. Jeffrey played replaced Crispin Glover for those roles because Crispin was asking to be paid the same amount as Michael J. Fox for the sequels. So yeah, they got rid of him and then they just tried to hide it and everything. And then it led to a lot of interesting laws in the film industry
Oh,
uh, where because they used a form of like a face mask of of Crispin Glover from some other film that he had done for makeup purposes, and
Mm-hmm.
then they made like prosthetics to put on Jeff to make him look like Crispin.
Mm.
And yeah, and they also used footage from the first movie, and they didn't pay him at all for the second and third movies. So they had footage of
A Crispin?
Crispin mixed in with new performances from Jeffrey, and they kind of got sued for the fact that they didn't pay him, and now there's new laws that like if you're using stock footage, or not stock footage, but I mean like previous footage or archive footage as they call it, of an actor in a film, you have to pay them. And I think that applies now to even things like an AI representation of somebody and stuff like that. You can't, like if I shot a movie with you and
Mm-hmm.
then 2 years later I wanted to make a sequel, but I didn't want to pay you your, fee for it, I could just create an AI version of you and put it in the movie and say screw you. But you can't do that anymore. No.
No, no, I think I read in an article that Warner Brothers was considering doing a biopic of Edith Piaf, but they were just going to use artificial intelligence. But I don't know if that's true or if that is just a rumor that I read somewhere on the internet.
I mean, it
Um,
could be. The AI thing is very interesting and exciting, but also very scary, in my opinion, when it comes to
yeah,
future
yeah,
of.
and I think either you or your co-host mentioned that it may look like somebody who is real, but it doesn't have the soul or the heart of an
Yeah.
actor or a writer or a director, which is something that I find also very frightening. And I remembered I listened to another podcast called The Movies That Made Me. So Joe Dante referred to it. So it's going to be like one of those Czech Republic Tom and Jerry cartoons, the
Yeah.
badly animated ones, is how he described it.
Yeah.
With so but I understand because I'm not a big fan of artificial intelligence either, other than that one Steven Spielberg movie called Artificial Intelligence with
Yeah, which didn't use artificial intelligence.
yeah.
Yeah, but it also
Yeah,
kind of warned us of the good and bad of artificial intelligence when it comes to things. Yeah.
yeah. But yeah, exactly. So that's just what I wanted to talk about for your podcast, but I still listened to some of your episodes, and you reviewed another film called Gone to Maui with Pat Morita, which I've been
Yeah.
trying to find it on the internet, like maybe a trailer or clips of it, but I don't know if I could find it. Do you know where you and your guys had found footage of this movie?
The full movie's on YouTube.
Oh, it is on YouTube.
Yes,
So I
somebody uploaded it to YouTube, so that's how my co-host found that one and suggested it. We tend to rotate our topics each week. Like I do one week, he does one the next week. So yeah, that's how we choose it. And yeah, he found that on YouTube randomly somehow, and he's just like, yeah, this looks like a bad movie we should cover. So
uh yeah. I mean, I've seen my shares of both high and low movies, like movies that are good and movies that I mean, I call them guilty pleasures because even
oh
though they're
yeah.
bad, I still love them
Hmm.
for their awfulness.
Yeah.
So yeah, because I'm a Misty fan, I'm a Riff Tracks fan, and I've watched my share of bad movies as well, even without the guys' commentaries, which I find to be hilarious.
Yeah, I mean I'm a big Misty fan too, and it's just yeah, it's like um it's fun to watch bad movies that are so bad they're good. And a lot of the movies that we cover on the podcast are bad movies or failed sitcom pilots and things of that nature. But we just find that more fun. But sometimes we do cover like ones we love and stuff too. So yeah, but and in all aspects, whenever we quote unquote make fun of a movie, we don't want to disregard the hard work that has gone into the movie either, because I know as a filmmaker myself that it's really hard to make a movie. Even if it comes out bad, the best thing you can do is just make your movie, and because it's better than the idea in your head once you get it out on film or video or whatever. And it's just, but there's so much work that goes into it that I don't think anybody sets out to. I mean, maybe something like Sharknado or something, but I don't think anybody sets out to make a bad movie. So yeah,
Yeah. I mean, you mentioned Sharknado by the Asylum, which I only saw that one and Sharknado 2,
yeah.
but not their other sequels, which I I, I don't know.
I think I've
Um,
watched the first one. I don't know if I've watched any other ones, but yeah.
I mean, I watched the first two, and then I remembered I saw a trailer that Tommy Wiseau directed. It was like a shark movie, and I was like, oh
Yeah.
God, it looks so
Yeah.
bad. I'm like Tommy Wiseau, the guy who made The Room, and
Yeah,
I thought,
that's even another good example is like Tommy Wiseau did not go into the room intending to make a bad movie.
mhm.
It just happened to end up being one of the worst movies ever made. So
Yeah. I mean, I only saw the making of that movie, The Disaster Artist with James Franco and his brother Dave,
yeah,
which I thought was a really great like making of the movie while also trying to uh be humorous at the same time, which I thought was an interesting choice of casting comic actors in these sort of like serious uh portrayals, which I thought was an interesting choice.
and that movie is pretty accurate to what actually happened. At least according to Greg Sestero, the part that Dave Franco plays in the movie.
Mm.
I read his book and that the movie's based on, and it's pretty
Mm.
accurate. Even the book is even crazier than the movie, in my opinion. So yeah,
Yeah. Yeah, yeah. It is great. Because I mean, I used to think about making a movie that would be like not like what James Franco's character experiences in this movie, of course. But I did get to enjoy being on set for some other productions, whether it be a commercial or maybe a short film that I love to do. But I never got a chance to work on maybe like something medium or big budget. But I keep hoping and wishing maybe that I could have that chance someday.
yeah, I'm hoping to get back into directing myself. I haven't directed in a few years. I have directed two feature films. One called Pi Day Die Day, which is a horror comedy about um, people dying on March 14th in a small town in Ohio.
Mm.
And basically it's like kind of who done it, like you got to figure out who the killer is sort of thing, but it's like, it's completely a comedy and we know it's a bad movie when we make it too. So it's one of those that we go in, like I said, not everybody goes in making it a bad movie, but we made it a good movie that is kind of a bad movie, but it was like real low budget, like even lower budget than Once. It was yeah, but we did have I did have the opportunity in that movie to work with Ari Lehman, who was the original Jason Voorhees in
Mm.
the 1980 Friday
Uh,
the 13th. He's the little
mm,
boy that pops out of the water at the end of the movie.
mm.
Yeah, great guy, really nice, and kept everybody entertained on set. Played music for everybody and was just really cool. He's in a band called First Jason, which is a horror rock band. So he's a pretty good musician and stuff. You should look him up if you're listening to this. He's a good guy. Yeah, and then we also made another film called Shelved, which was about a little elf on a shelf type doll that terrorized a family. And
Mm.
yeah, so yeah, those were both written by my friend Lindsay LaForest of One Stoplight Productions, and I have my own company, Cullen Park Productions, which you can see the logo behind me. But
Yeah.
yeah, so yeah, yeah. So, but yeah, if anybody gets a chance, go to cullenpark.com and check those out because they're fun movies. They're bad but fun.
Okay.
Yeah,
Thank you for the plugins. I
yeah,
would check them out.
yeah.
So speaking of that movie once,
Mhm.
so I think there were a few songs that I think stuck to me. I liked the song that they sung. I originally thought it was like the love theme in the film Falling Slowly, that the one that they sing at this music shop
Yeah.
that Markéta starts playing the piano and Glen is playing the guitar, and it feels so intimate as you mentioned, and it also feels like it does feel like a love theme that was written specifically for this movie. And I'm trying to remember, there was another one when they were at the recording studio This was later in the film with Glenn and, of course, two other guitarists and a drummer, and Markéta playing piano. I'm trying to remember the name of it, but I think I just drew a blank in my head. But it's a really great. They're both really good songs in this movie, very effective, and I think very much integral to the story narrative. When I think of movie musicals, I always think of songs, as you mentioned, that they have their own little stories, but
Hmm.
they're also integral to the plot because we get to know more about these characters and more about how, uh, as we dive deep into the plot of what each little character reveals.
Yeah, I mean, I like the way the music in this movie, it tells the story as well along the way. But it's not like a not like something like, like Sound of Music or something where people just break out into song.
Hmm.
It's a modern type of musical where it kind of goes into the story. I mean, the film was turned into a Broadway musical that won some Tony Awards and stuff too. So, which I've seen that live. I also have seen Glenn and Marquetta and their band Swell Season live in concert.
Hmm.
Um, yeah, they're amazing in live as well. So yeah, it's just but yeah, Falling Slowly won the Academy Award for Best Song and for
Hmm.
that year. So yeah.
Yeah. I think I did. I think I found it on YouTube. Like both the, I think it was Glenn was receiving the Oscar, but Marquetta didn't arrive until maybe minutes later to accept the award. And it wasn't until I think the next break or whatever it was that she came to read her acceptance speech for the Oscar.
Yeah.
I think you could find it on YouTube for those who have never seen the acceptance speech by both Glenn and Marquetta at the Oscars YouTube channel. It's really good.
Yeah. I mean, another interesting thing during the filming of the movie, Glenn and Marquetta started dating
Oh,
in real life. So yeah.
I wasn't sure if they later ended up marrying other people or they were just dating maybe for a while. I don't know.
They did, and she ended up she's been married twice to two other guys. So yeah, and she's
Yeah.
currently married to a guy and has three kids.
Hmm.
Yeah, and I don't know about Glenn. I'm not sure what his story is, but it's kind of, I mean, I can understand why their relationship didn't work because he's I believe like 18 years older than her.
Oh.
So yeah, so
Yeah, that is pretty interesting too. So yeah, but other than this, do you have any recommendations that are similar to this film, like story-wise, or maybe like sort of a contemporary movie musical that is on the same level as this picture?
I mean, I think any other of John Carney's films would probably be your best bet to have something with a similar feel.
Hmm.
I think like I like movies like this though that kind of have a open-ended ending. That's hard to say. Um,
Yeah.
yeah, but yeah,
Yeah.
the I like movies that don't have necessarily the happy ending that you expect because life never really, I mean, life can always have a happy ending. It just depends on where you end it. Any
Hmm.
story can have a happy ending, you just kind of, but you never know. Like you don't see what happens to the prince and the princess after after they go off into the sunset or whatever. It's just, you don't know about the, 3 weeks later when they're fighting over who's doing the dishes or whatever, So it's just, not everything is a happy ending per se. It just depends on where you stop the sentence.
Hmm.
Um, the yeah, I mean, I'm trying to think. I mean, I think like in a way, even though it does end up in a happy way, like When Harry Met Sally is always an interesting story about love and stuff, and I kind of think it's kind of like a kindred spirit to this film in a way, where this is only like something that happens in like 1 week, whereas When Harry Met Sally is the exact opposite, where it shows a friendship that becomes love. This is more like you have like a week like intimate love affair that doesn't necessarily have intimacy like you know sex or whatever in it, but this ends up, but it's like a heartfelt intimate thing that happens in 1 week that can change your life, whereas like When Harry Met Sally is a story that takes place over decades,
mm,
of a couple before they get together, when they're just friends and they're enemies and then they're friends and everything before they get together. So it's
mm,
kind of like the opposite sort of story, but it
mm,
still feels similar in my mind.
that
Mm.
that does sound like good recommendations.
Yeah.
Yeah. So when I saw this film, I usually think of anything that feels low budget or independent, or maybe, as you mentioned, something that's integral to the plot of a story. Because I did take a movie musical class when I was in college, learning about the history of movie musicals and how you have the origins of like how movie musicals came to be. It's like you have a mixture of Broadway, vaudeville, minstrelsy, and all that sort of stuff, and then you go into like the early talking sound, experimental sound films, and then you go from there to the early movie musicals would be like your Busby Berkeley's or your oh my goodness, your MGM operetta type style type movies that came out. But I always try to find like movies that made me feel, in terms of movie musicals, that may feel interesting, even though I always find them interesting as well. One of my favorite examples is, it's not like low budget, but it's sort of in that same spirit.
Yeah.
Oh my God, who Jacques Demy is another one of my favorite movie musical directors. He directed films like Umbrellas of Cherbourg or The Sisters of oh my God, I'm blanking out right now because I did it on my podcast years ago. Or no, not years ago. Just a few years ago I covered
Yeah.
it, and it's really well made. So those types of movie musicals, even though it's done on maybe not low budget, but like medium to big budget, but they're still good movie musicals to me that I enjoyed very much. Because I'm a fan of the French New Wave, and I'm also a fan of Jacques Demy and Agnes Varda and all those sort of movie musicals from that period.
Yeah. I
One of
mean,
my yeah, one of my
I'm sorry, the new wave thing kind of just reminded me that Breathless is another film that kind of has a similar feel to Once, in a way.
mm,
Like, yeah.
yeah, yeah, Jean-Luc Godard. Another one of my favorite film idols, if one would
Yeah.
call it that.
Mm.
Really masterful in his work. I've seen a couple of his few movies that he made before he passed. One he called Goodbye to Language from 2014, and the other was The Image Book, and they were basically experimental movies, as he would refer them to. They were basically narratives that they don't feel like traditional Hollywood narrative
Yeah.
stories, because he always experimented with story and style and all sorts of things, and he was a very, I think, literate man as well, if
Yeah.
any. But that was something I remembered thinking about, and I've seen Breathless, and I've seen a couple of his other movies that I enjoyed as well.
Yeah. I like the cinema verite sort of style of that. And I think Once kind of is a modern take on that in a way, you know? So, yeah.
It does have that sort of take, because it does have that cinema verite documentary style,
Hmm.
that I don't know. Wait, I think we still see some of that today, but I don't know what best examples you would call cinema verite in today's movie making, or maybe phone movie making today is.
Yeah. I mean, some of that maybe, but also, I mean, like when it comes to like recent modern history, you've had things like TV shows like The Office or Curb Your Enthusiasm or things like that that are kind of in a cinema verite sort of style, but
Mhm.
they're more comedic and they're not like, like
Yeah.
they have
Yeah.
a structure to them though. So yeah.
Yeah, I think yeah, you mentioned Curb Your Enthusiasm in The Office. The other one that reminded me of this was a TV show called Modern Family is another example. It's
Yeah.
sort of like documentary style as well.
Yeah.
And then oh my goodness, the Sacha Baron Cohen films that he made,
Oh, like the
Borat,
Borat.
yeah,
Yeah.
Borat, Bruno. I saw his film The Dictator, which I thought
Mm.
was pretty interesting too.
Yeah.
Those types of movies, they also have a sort of like cinema verite feel, but they feel more like as filmed with actors portraying real people, even though the real people don't realize they're on camera. It's like the hidden camera type of movies, which I thought were pretty interesting too.
Yeah. I agree. Yeah.
Mm. Yeah, so Um, so before we end the show, we still have some time left. So anything else you want to talk about this movie before we get into your last statements or other questions?
I think, I mean, the one thing I find interesting is that the most expensive part of this movie was there's a crane shot at the end of the movie that cost them over $2,000, and that was the most expensive thing in the whole movie. And I think
Yeah.
that that's just amazing that, I mean, the movie was made for like $100,000 or something. So it's like, yeah, which
Mm.
which I would love to have right now for a movie, but
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And I know this movie was made before the invention of the drones, because
yeah,
yeah, because in this movie, one would say, "Oh, this looks like as if it was filmed from a drone," and I would be like, "Drones weren't invented until like the
yeah,
next decade."
yeah,
So they were doing with whatever equipment they had left. So as you mentioned, a crane shot, or maybe there
yeah,
was this one long take shot that I remembered. Markéta Irglová was listening to Glen Hansford's music as she was
yeah,
putting the earbuds on, and it was like a continuous long take from the store all the way to her apartment where she lives
yeah,
with her mother and her daughter. And I thought that was a really interesting long take. And I'm like,
yeah.
it reminded me of, oh my goodness, I would think of one contemporary filmmaker who I would say does that, Alejandro Inarritu, or another one I would think of is, oh my God, who was the director of that movie Roma? That oh my
The name
goodness.
the name's escaping me too. So yeah.
Yeah, yeah, but that shot reminded me of those two types of filmmakers known for their long takes and continuous long take shots without any interruption. So it reminded me of that.
Yeah, I mean that's the thing about like digital filmmaking that makes it easy to do a continuous shot where you can, something with like a camcorder like they shot this with, where you can do that easier now. I know that back in the day, like Hitchcock tried to do something like that with rope, but
Mm,
you could only film 8 minutes at a time
yeah.
with
I
a good camera. So he had to do clever cuts, like somebody opens up a trunk and it creates a black space, and then they close the trunk, and then that's another reel that they're
mhm.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah, it's amazing. Or I could put this in as another famous example, the opening of the movie Touch of Evil by Orson Welles. I
Oh
thought
yeah,
that, yeah, which I thought was another continuous long shot going from, I'm trying to remember how the film opened and how it how that scene opened and how it ended. If I try to remember it, I think it was like it shot with like the close up of the car, and then it went from there to like uh Janet Leigh and Charlton Heston. They were walking out of the car and they were going, and it's like a crane shot. And I think this was before a bombing or an explosion happened. I'm trying to.
yeah.
It's been
It's
a while since I lost
I was gonna say
last
it's
seen
been
it.
probably 15 years since I've seen Touch of Evil. So yeah,
Yeah, but it reminded me of that continuous long take shot that I don't know if it took like I think continuous long takes. I think it's like one day and you have to shoot it for once, or maybe you have to redo it again.
yeah, and I mean there's like, I mean, there's also the continuous long take in Goodfellas too, when they're going through the club at that one point.
Mm,
Yeah, they it that's a brilliant shot too. And I mean there's a lot of movies that have the continuous long takes, which I kind of like that too. I mean it's got to be hard on everybody on set though, like the actors and the crew and everybody too, is to, I mean, there was like that movie Russian Ark as well that was like done in the way that was
mm.
completely a one take movie.
Oh
It's
wow. Yeah.
Yeah, it's amazing to watch. I don't know necessarily if I really like the movie per se. I mean, it's a good movie. It's not like
Mhm.
captivating per se, but it's interesting for the technical aspect of it. So yeah.
Yeah. Um, yeah, absolutely. I would love to see that too. I haven't gotten a chance to see this film. So okay, we're almost out of time. So some last things I would say about this film too is I like the story. I like that it's very simple, as you said, and that we don't need to know the characters' names because we only know them as guy and girl. And I also loved the music in the film performed and acted out by these two talented actors slash musicians, Glen Hansford and Markéta Irglová. The
Mhm.
direction and writing by John Carney, and also that it's one of those films that I think more people who have never heard of this film or seen it, maybe they would get a shot at seeing this movie. So I think this is the perfect movie for those who have never seen a low budget movie musical. I think you should give it a shot. It's wonderfully made, and I think you'll enjoy it.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think you can go wrong watching this. It'll hit you, you know, in different ways because it's I think it's something we can all relate to where we, like I said at the beginning, that it's like those chance encounters we have in life with somebody that changes our lives, whether it be a romantic person, partner, or just a friend that, you know, influences you and you could only know them for a day or a week or your whole life. It just depends, you know. So yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So before we end the show, so where would my audience find you, just to plug yourself for your show?
You can find our podcast at all2real2.com. That's ALLTOOREEL, the number two. Or no, wait, it's the other way around. Oh my God, I just screwed up my own show.
Okay.
ALL, the number two, REELTOO. Um, oh wow. Yeah, I don't really say it out loud that much. So yeah,
Okay.
all2real2.com. You can find everything there. There's links to our social media and our Patreon and our T Public and everything there. You can find everything there for us. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you so much for your thank you so much. And this has been my interview with Michael E. Cullen II, the host of All Too Real 2 podcast. And you can learn more about his work at is it cullenpark.com?
Yeah, you can find cullenpark.com for upcoming films. I've got a film that I just wrote that I'm hoping to produce in the next couple of years. So look
Oh,
out for that. So yeah.
oh, awesome. That's good to hear. Thank you so much. So this has been my interview with Michael E. Cullen II, host of All Too Real 2, the podcast where you can find them on Apple Podcast and Spotify. Are those the only two platforms, or are there any
We're
other?
we're everywhere.
Okay.
We're on YouTube and everywhere you can listen to as well. We're on YouTube and we're also on every podcast platform you can find. So yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So thank you so much for being on the show, and I hope that we can see each other soon.
Awesome.
Okay,
Thank you.
thank you so much.